everybody. Merry Christmas to you. It's Joe Chaffee here, the 25th of December, 2018. We are at the last days of 2018, and I hope you are enjoying a great Christmas, at least from the standpoint of weather. It's reasonably quiet, at least for the Northeast and for the Mid-Atlantic states. It actually really through much of the eastern half of the U.S. Right now, it's a fairly easy day. There are just some minor travel issues going on in a few places, and that's about it. But we do have a storm that is going to be heading up toward the Great Lakes and bringing some big snows to parts of the Plain States. We're going to get into that. We'll look at some watches and winter storm watches and warnings that have already gone up for parts of the plains, and going to look at the longer range. I'm also not going to go very long today because it's Christmas Day, and it's coming up soon. And those of you who do afternoon dinners, I'm sure you're probably an hour or two away from that. We used to usually have a Christmas dinner maybe about 2 o'clock or so. I figured this was a good time to get you before you're with a full stomach and you're basically napping away from the post-Christmas dinner nap that everybody seems to take. So, by the way, thank you very much for the kind words that many of you have left and the Christmas greetings. I tried to answer everybody individually when they left it in the comments. I don't always succeed, so if I missed you, I'm sorry, and let me take this opportunity to extend a Merry Christmas right now. I also did see that a number of you saw my trains. My Lionel trains, and I saw that also that the response from some of you was to bring out your own trains, and that's a great thing. It depends on how you count them. I have half a dozen sets. I have one. My oldest set is as old as I am, which is 59, and I had my younger sets were out this weekend. If you didn't see them, there's two videos on the video library, one from Sunday and one from yesterday. The lobster tails, by the way, were insane. They were so good. If you're into lobster tails, make sure you get cold water lobster tails. There's a huge difference between the cold water and warm water lobster tails in terms of texture and in terms of taste. And the cold water lobster tails are so much better, and we usually get them at Costco, which is they bring them down from Maine, and they were just the best. And also, when you pick your lobster tails, go for the smaller ones. Don't get the bigger ones. The meat in the bigger ones is a bit tougher. The smaller ones are nice and tender. And my prime rib wrapped with bacon, because as everybody knows, no matter what it is, everything tastes better if you wrap it in bacon, and that also was outstanding. So Reaver, I guessed your question ahead of time. I got them at Costco, and again, cold water lobster tails. All right, as opposed to the warm water. Make sure you ask that question. And the bacon, by the way, Jason Schaefer, I also get the without having this turned into a commercial for Costco, but they have their store brand, Kirkland brand, the extra thick bacon, which is like really thick bacon, and you wrap it around any kind of roast that you're doing. It's insane how good that bacon is and how good it makes the whatever it is you're cooking, makes it terrific. So it's very, very important. My little Brooklyn accent kind of snuck in there. Okay, so let's get going, and maybe there'll be a Christmas present for some of you folks thinking about the long range, because all the things that we were talking about with respect to the pattern undergoing some sort of change looks like it's all beginning to get underway. We've got this big warming that's going on in the stratosphere that actually started already. If you want to put the start day, was probably yesterday, and it's going to be going into full force through the rest of this week until that vortex weakens and splits or falls apart, whatever it is. and that is going to be the driver for the pattern as we go into January. And we're already starting to see some signs on models, by the way, that the pattern is going to be changing into the first part of January. What it ultimately gets to, I don't know. That is always the big question and the big mystery. But we'll just take it step by step. So as far as watches and warnings are concerned from the Weather Service today, we've got winter storm watches up for much of Nebraska. There's warnings already up for northwestern Kansas and a small portion of eastern Colorado. We've got the watches extending up through almost all of South Dakota except the northwestern counties. North Dakota is basically split in half between winter weather advisory and winter storm watch. And except for the southeastern part of Minnesota, we've got winter storm watches up there. Advisories as you go back through the rest of North and South Dakota into southern Montana and extreme northeastern Wyoming. Advisories across southern Idaho, a good chunk of Nevada, and also for parts of eastern Arizona and in western New Mexico, particularly in elevated areas, and in a couple of counties as you get into southeastern Utah, southwestern Colorado, with various advisories and winter storm warnings. But again, as we said, much of the eastern U.S. is pretty quiet at the moment. On the satellite loop this afternoon, we are beginning to see the energy dropping down in the west. You could actually see the rotation in the clouds in the southwest. So that is the trough, the deep trough that is dropping down into the west. So we've got a bit of a ridge here that's popping up in the east. There's a weak disturbance that's moving through the lower Ohio and Tennessee Valley. It is producing some snows on the radar in, well, we saw it earlier anyway, in parts of West Virginia and northwestern Virginia. I don't know how much of that was actually reaching the ground and whether it was really doing anything other than providing a sugar coating. There's also a little bit of lake effect action going on in parts of southwestern New York with the wind coming in off of Lake Erie. But that really is about it. Otherwise, it's pretty calm and quiet up and down the seaboard down to Florida. And, of course, you've got this action going on in the west, which is going to set up the next storm system as it heads out into the plain states. So this storm looks like it's going to be one of these 1 foot plus producers for a relatively large area. And I got WPC's Weather Prediction Center's probability map here. You could set the parameters if you go to the WPC website, which is wpc.nsep.noaa.gov. So under winter weather, you can find this. It's a probability map, and I set it to the probability of 4 inches or more of snow through December 28th. And you can see that there's a pretty large area that's being shown where the probability is at least 40%. And over the years, with looking at their forecasts, 40% probability actually winds up verifying most of the time. So that's a pretty high number looking out to 72 hours. And you've got areas that are being marked at 80 or 90%. I just kind of slid it over here. This is actually the probability of between 1 and 5% of 18 inches in parts of the Great Plains and in through northern Minnesota and right along the shores of Lake Superior. Here's the 12-inch probability, and you actually do have some areas indicating 10 to 20% probability of at least 12. The 8 area is fairly impressive, a large area of 40 or better running from northeastern South Dakota and across Minnesota. I think it makes sense. You see where all the winter storm watches are up. So it pretty much lines up very well with what the WPC is thinking. And now on to the weather models as we take a look. Hopefully we've got enough of that parallel GFS out to see what it does. So that I'm starting to kind of use that more and more. But the parallel comes out a little later than the operational, so we have less of it. And here's your storm that is coming out. Now, I want to show you guys, by the way, this is a perfect example because this actually came up in one of my YouTube in one of my Facebook live streams last week, because I mentioned the fact that the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, was going to be strongly negative, and the argument to me back was the fact that, well, then how can, a storm system, how can a storm, if the NAO was really strongly negative, it'd be going to our south, and in fact, that isn't always the case. First of all, it is negative, but now on the new charts, from the overnight GFS ensemble run, the new charts have it a bit less negative, but even when it gets back to the neutral line, it doesn't really get much above that. You have a little bit of a slight positive activity in the NAO as we move through the first days of the new year, but it really sort of straddles that neutral line, but it is negative now. And that actually might be more reflecting of the fact that we do have this disturbance that's moving through the lower Ohio and Tennessee Valley, that's moving eastward and weakening. That thing is falling apart. There's no ridge, as you got this deep trough that's diving down into the west, and as a result, you don't have a ridge in the west, obviously, which could have maybe supported a stronger system coming east. But the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, is going to the mode of trough west, ridge east in the next couple of days, which is really setting up the system for Friday. That low is going up to the Great Lakes. But I want to point out a couple of things. First off, remember, every day it's a different snapshot. So these numbers, these values you're going to see are going to come up they're going to change over the course of a number of days. And we talked about last week, with everything going on in the stratosphere, expect more model volatility going forward, and that you're going to probably start to see some changes in the picture. And indeed, we are seeing that in the PNA, in the Pacific North America Index, and now we're seeing it also in the East Pacific Oscillation, which I think is very important, the EPO, because it's the EPO, when that's negative, that really tends to favor colder weather in the east. And in fact, if you think back to last week, I forgot what day it was, where it had it basically strongly positive for 16 days. Now that we're getting closer, we're starting to see models reacting to that big change going on in the stratosphere. It's going to take a while for those short-term, it was going to take a while for models to catch up. So expect more volatility here. We always have volatility when we go into the long range, but expect even higher amounts of the models to be even more volatile than they usually are. The spiking PNA to strongly positive, starting from the last, it actually starts to spike up positive from the 28th of December, when we're at the bottom negative value, and then it runs up quickly to neutral on the 30th, 31st, and then gets strongly positive through the whole first week of January, right through at least the 9th. So that is telegraphing that we're going to get a strong ridge in the west, deep trough in the east. Exactly where the trough and the ridge are axised is going to be important here. All right, is it at 80? Is it at 75? Is it at 85? Is it at 90? Those are very important questions, and the indices don't tell us that. Okay, but we are seeing, again, the spike positive on the PNA, the EPO going slightly positive till about New Year's Day, and then it goes to neutral and then goes negative. So it is at least signaling here that we're going to see an increasingly colder pattern going forward into the first part of January. So our next storm is going to behave in a way, in the east anyway, much like last Friday's did, in that you've got warm air and a southerly flow that sets up ahead of it. It doesn't look quite as dynamic as that one did. The gradient doesn't get nearly as tight, and there might be some heavy rains, but perhaps it won't be as excessive. Meanwhile, I think you have to look for the possibility that there could be some maybe a slight risk of severe weather across parts of the Gulf states through all of this come Thursday and into Thursday night and on Friday in parts of the southeast. Certainly, we probably see some heavy rains out of this. As far as snow is concerned, across the Dakotas and through Nebraska, up and through northern Minnesota, you can see where the band is setting up with this low, a 97 low in central Iowa. There'll be an occlusion with probably a low east of the Appalachians that forms at the point of occlusion that runs up, produces an area that winds up getting hit with some heavy rains. But this is going to be another one where if you look at up in New England, the rain, the snow, there is some snow at the start in parts of New Hampshire and Maine, and some ice on the northern fringe, but that ultimately goes over to rain. Now, after that, you're going to start to see, I think what you're going to start to see is the sort of stair-step decline of colder air. The first shot comes over next weekend. It's not a particularly cold shot. It's also, at least on this run, there is a low for next Sunday that moves off the southeast coast with an area of light precip that gets suppressed out to the south and east, according to the models. Models were having some trouble with this in the last few days, showing, at times further, another system trying to go further north versus further south. I think this is going to wind up being further south. Whether it's a flattish looking system or not remains to be seen. I think I would probably lean to the idea that it will be a bit on the flat side. And then we've got more energy to deal with that's going to come out around New Year's Day, and this might have a little more with it, and there's a cold high that comes down. So you're going to start to see these cold highs coming back down into the U.S. with cold shots of air. This is the operational GFS, by the way. The parallel GFS from overnight was actually significantly colder in the longer term. The operational today actually does have a rather cold look to it. It's just that we don't know, again, where are these troughs going to set up and where is the ridge going to set up. Remember, you can have all the teleconnections screaming at you, in the world, screaming at you that there's potential storm threat or snow threat, but if you've got the troughs and ridges all in the wrong place, they don't really do you a whole lot of good. Now, backing up, so let's just back up in the upper air. Going into Christmas, and you can see that the flow here is still, you got this trough in the west, ridge in between. The flow in Canada is running from northwest Canada across southern Canada into southeastern Canada. That's where the colder push really is. The ridge in the east gets, pops up here, that gets flattened out. You get a shortwave trough that swings around for next weekend. So we're going to have to watch that to see if it winds up being sharper. That certainly could mean that there will be some precip here, rain or snow or both, depending on location, for next Sunday night into Monday. And then another short wave with a stronger trough behind it. And this is going to be for perhaps later New Year's Day into the middle of next week. But the overall flavor of the upper pattern is such that, especially as we get deeper into the first 10 days of January, that you're going to want to have a trough off the west coast, a ridge along or just into the west coast, and then a trough somewhere in the east. It's the operational GFS has been going in this direction, waiting to see if the other models follow. I want to just take a look at the parallel GFS of what we have of it. And then I'm going to come to the chat board because I don't want to keep you guys all day, and we'll talk for a little while. But here's the parallel GFS. Here's your snowstorm, by the way, for Thursday into Friday, up through the Dakotas and into northern Minnesota. And then that goes out, and unfortunately we only have out to 102 hours. I'm just going to check one of the other geographic points here. Sometimes they different ones update faster than the others, so we only have out to 102. So but you get the idea. All right, folks, it's not going to obviously we're not going to have any answers. There's nothing pressing here that we need to discuss with regards to our own weather, particularly over the fact that the next few days are going to be pretty nice and just quiet until we get to Friday's rain, which could be another, by the way, 1 to 2 locally to 3-inch rain producer in the east. WPC has a bit of a less bullish view for the northern mid-Atlantic and into southern New England, but it gives about 1 inch to 1.5 inches there, and you can see the bigger amounts in the Carolinas, on up and through northern Georgia, and back through Mississippi and Alabama, and a lot of this is going to be convective, and that's why. So that's why we see the 3, 4, 5-inch amounts over the next 7 days in that part of the U.S. So, okay. Timothy Veltman, you don't mind spending the day with your three favorite. Okay, so your three favorite Joes are Rayo, the cup of coffee, and me, and I'm very flattered that I'm included in that. Merry Christmas to Michael Burrell, Seth Dominus. We've got Reaver, Robert Hurley, James NASCAR, Fabian Bartelos, Nicholas Gallo. Okay, just going backwards here. James NASCAR, Jason Schaefer, Stephen White, the Tyler Knepp, Michael Azara. I think I got everybody. Delvin, nice to see you. Mahogany 2680, nice to see you on board. William Uber, Iron Mind, and you guys are loyal. I got to tell you, it's Christmas Day. This is awesome. Joseph Ferranda, Dio Nankumar, Garo Vestas, Vetsis, and Charlie Baker, who was, and Izzy D. Charlie really got into my trains. Just real fast, since we do have it, let's just really quick. We'll bring up Les Vortex Polar. We'll go to the GFS. I'm going to go to the. You have to go to this one gigantic hemispheric view if you're on tropicaltidbits.com to see the 10 millibar. And in fact, here we are on Saturday. Look at the orientation here of the. You got the one high and the one low. That's usually how it works at this level. You see how the polar vortex. Just to refresh. So here it is. Right. This was as of Saturday. The big polar vortex, pretty much centered on the Siberian side of the Arctic Ocean there. The flow across the Arctic westerly, you've got an upper high sitting from the Aleutians in the stratosphere we're talking about here. From the Aleutians into the Canadian Northwest, you don't really have a polar flow in the stratosphere here at this point. Of course, excuse me, we know that this has been relatively mild weather overall for us and for a good chunk of the U.S. anyway. So now that's the big change in the polar vortex in the stratosphere. The big, huge reddish area there. That is a unprecedented warming from those who work with this stuff and follow it closely. The polar vortex in the stratosphere stretches and weakens, and depending on which model run you look at, we have a split that occurs. This is at January 2nd, and then that upper low kind of drops down into the northeast. So you have one upper low that drops down into the eastern part of the United States, an upper high that is almost over the southern areas of the polar region, and the remaining stronger part of the polar vortex on this run winds up going back, migrating to Europe and Siberia. So this is a significant development, because when you have a weak polar vortex in the stratosphere at this time of year, it tends to favor colder weather coming into the United States, and we're thinking that, well, those who follow it, at least on a close basis, who've worked with this, say that it's going to be for the eastern part of the United States. Follow Judah Cohen on Twitter, Dr. Judah Cohen, because he has been, front and center on this, tweeting about it just about every day, multiple times, with regards to these model runs. And the ensembles all show it, the European shows it, the Canadian shows it, all the models have this. So the big mystery for us is going to be, how does this all play out in a practical way? Good looking, okay. Will the polar vortex kill the cornfields in the south? I don't know. I don't really know what the day-to-day application is going to be with regards to the actual weather that occurs. I don't think anybody really knows specifically, what this is going to entail. Is it probably going to mean for winter weather to occur across the United States? Yes. How it plays out specifically, that's a question I cannot answer. Okay? Ralph Corello, Merry Christmas to you. Inch of snow yesterday morning. Too bad it wasn't today. Oh, yeah, Bill, you had that last night over parts of Long Island, over central and eastern Long Island. It actually snowed for a couple of hours. That put down a sloppy coating to about an inch in a couple of places, and then as soon as it stopped, it just disappeared almost as fast because the temperatures were so warm. Alicina Al-Wazali, Merry Christmas to you. Nice to see you on board. Rena Bartow from St. Augustine, Florida. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Merry Christmas to you. Try to keep the quality high. Thank you for that's a very kind thing to say, and I really appreciate it. John Trabacchino, Merry Christmas. You got 2 inches yesterday in Williamstown, so you had your white Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Joseph Mayano, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat today. Really appreciate it. Very, very nice of you. Cigar for me, and Merry Christmas to you and to your family. Thank you so much. So, I think that pretty well covers it. We kept it under a half an hour today, which is really good, and that's it's Christmas Day. We need to be, playing with our trains and having a great dinner, surrounded by family, taking the Christmas nap, and everything that goes with it. So that is where we're going to leave it at this point. I might, for Patreon members, sneak in a live stream later this afternoon when the European comes out, just to kind of go over this a little bit. So I'll put up a time. It'll probably be after 2 o'clock, because then the European is done. But other than that, I think we're good for the rest of the day. You went to get bagels 2 miles away and there was no snow on the ground. Not a surprise. No snow in northern Ohio, Mike Hobbs. But this pattern change is going to be important to you. So we got to watch it, watch it closely. Ryan Ford, you're always going to have a certain amount of volatility depending on where the trough and the ridge are. So I guess the more important thing is going to be, when does a more consistent cold pattern set up? And I think you're going to see that happen as we get into the first week of January, and then let's see how long it lasts. Maybe this will last for a while. William Uber is up to 7.5 inches for the year. And by the way, that November snowfall was enough that most areas in my neck of the woods are still above normal, and they're going to be above normal probably at least through the first week of January. So, nothing that's happened so far this month. I know for snow lovers, the basic rule is it needs to snow every day from November 1st to April 30th, but it doesn't really work that way. And, I know that the snow weenies have all already kind of, said their final prayers and goodbyes and are ready to jump off the side of a bridge because we're not getting buried on a regular basis. And this happens every single year. This is just how it is. Could we have a subpar winter for you snow lovers? Absolutely. It could certainly be a subpar winter. I have no idea where we're going with all this in the longer term pattern, but we're going to have a lot of fun watching it. Try not to work too hard. Don't worry, Timothy. No, it's so easy today weather-wise. This is a very easy day today. You got to go do firewood delivery tonight. Awesome. At least you don't have to do it driving through a snowstorm, and you get the firewood delivered before the next round of 50s to near 60 make it up your way, and then the real cold air that comes in for later for next week and beyond. So yes, William. So far, look, the snowstorm in November, the November 15th snowstorm, and the Thanksgiving temperatures so far, at least for our area, that's the benchmark right now. We have yet to take it out, but there's plenty of time for that to be taken out. Okay, all right, folks, that's it. Have a good day. Merry Christmas again to everyone here and to all your family. If you want to look at my trains, go look at the 2 videos I put up over the weekend and yesterday. You can see my Lionel trains running through the house, and my prime rib and my lobster tails. Remember, cold water lobster tails are the best. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.